The deck has been out for over a year now, but if you're like a lot of folks, you haven't had one for that long. And what if you're just now looking to get one? We're heading into the holiday season, so you might just be wondering if it's that time to pick one up on sale. Not to worry, I'm here to give you the scoop on the no longer a newborn Steam Deck. Also, if you haven't seen the first video where I reviewed the deck after owning it for 6 months, I encourage you to watch that, as I made sure to rewatch and rewrite the script several times so as not to repeat myself too much, by focusing today on where the Steam Deck rests in the vastness of handhelds. As a brief recap, since that last review, not much else has changed in terms of my feelings towards the deck, and my usage has been pretty consistent with that too. Other than making the odd guide here and there, the deck sits on the sidelines, waiting for a moment to shine. Part of that reason is because of game compatibility, and another is performance, and still one more reason, which I'll go into now. The big reason I don't use my deck anymore is that I'm lucky enough to have a dedicated gaming PC, and also some Windows handhelds that I use for testing and gaming for the channel. So looking up game compatibility, which was something that I did frequently the first few months of owning the Steam Deck, I hardly ever do now because I expect them to just work on Windows-based devices. Unless it's Skull Island Rise of Kong or the Metal Gear Solid collection, then your definition of work is subjective. That also means that I don't really pay much attention to Proton and SteamOS updates, unless a viewer asks me to check them out. In other words, the deck doesn't get much of a workout these days, which is the same conclusion I came to in my last video, as I primarily use Windows-based devices, as they're easier for my use case scenario to set up and get up and running. That, and as a person who likes to mod their games, Windows is a little bit more straightforward for that. For all of you asking me how to easily mod Mass Effect Legendary Edition, I haven't forgotten about you. I just have no easy way to do it other than copy-pastaing, and that's the only reason why it looks like I'm ignoring you. I swear I'm not. One thing I will concede is that I said previously the back buttons and trackpads were not really necessary. I rightfully got some criticism for that, and some of you said that I might be terrible with strategy in FPS games. No argument there. What's changed about the past 6 months for me, in those cases, is that since I've been lucky enough to use a few other Windows handhelds, like the ROG Ally, One X Player 2, and Neo 2, for all of those devices, I felt that something was definitely missing. For the back buttons, the ROG Ally has 2 of them instead of 4, and to put it nicely, they feel like kind of an afterthought. Sure, they're functional, but I could definitely see someone preferring the deck's back buttons. Then for the trackpads, while I'd primarily use them for navigation of the system, that's where they're super convenient for the less than user-friendly Windows handhelds. Yes, you can use the sticks to navigate, but they just don't feel as precise or responsive, at least to me. But let's move over to what else I think the deck still gets right. First is the price. In what I like to call price pegging, the deck really has set the precedent for higher-end handhelds. Gone are the days where you'd spend $1,000 just to get sub 30 FPS in Cyberpunk, because the deck can do that for 400 or less. Sure, there are handhelds now like the ROG Ally, which in some cases outperform the deck a good 30+ percentage points in frame rates, depending on the game. But let's also remember that the Ally is about twice the cost if we're comparing base model to base model, or at least $50 more if you're comparing the top ends. And that percentage gain is definitely less if you're looking at the non-extreme version of the Ally. Obviously, these aren't apples to apples comparisons for a few reasons, but I'm fairly confident in saying that I think the same person who would spend $400 on a handheld doesn't have to be the same person who would spend $700 on one, since we all have different priorities. And on that topic of priorities, outside of price, I'd say the second thing for the deck that it gets right is the efficiency for the performance. Of course, there are numerous handhelds with bigger batteries and higher performance ceilings, but boy is the deck efficient at 15 and even 10 watts, sometimes even lower than that. Of course, you may have difficulty playing some of the newest AAA titles like Starfield or Baldur's Gate, requiring you to jump through a few hoops to hit 30 FPS, but the fact that for the most part you can play current titles and then go backwards and play over 10,000 titles is no small feat, and that doesn't even touch upon emulation capability. I briefly mentioned in the last video that EmuDeck makes things super easy for Steam Deck users to jump into emulation. So assuming you've got the storage space, you could load up 5 digits worth of games on a single device. Show me another device that can do it for the same price and performance level as the deck. Go ahead, I'll wait. Okay, you and I obviously don't have all day, but let's go back into my use case for a moment. The Deck has without a doubt been the gateway for me into handhelds and possibly portable gaming. In many ways, it was the catalyst for starting this channel, and I cannot be more grateful for that. Now, I've never been under the delusion that the Deck could run every single game or every game at high settings, but because of the Deck, my opinions of handheld devices' capabilities was flipped on its head, or I was flipped on my head. I should probably get that checked out. You get the point. So where am I going with this? Well, here's my final thought. There are numerous competitors out there now, including the ROG Ally and soon the Legion Go, as well as the countless Ioneo models that are still coming out. What am I saying? There's only 25 of them right now, or is it 30? I forget. That compete at the top end of the Deck's pricing range. But the Steam Deck, despite my personal use case, is still hard to beat at the base $400 price point, and even more so with recent sales and refurbished models, which discount it even further. Now, if you're comfortable with the Windows device, or you want to use the Windows device, plenty of 6800U units and soon 7840U units will be discounted heavily in the near future as we see more and more handhelds that come out into the market. So that's the great news there, as you have a lot of choices when getting into the handheld PC gaming space. For me personally, now that Steam's Big Picture mode is out, fiddling with Windows is a lot less cumbersome, and apps like Handheld Companion and Handheld Control Panel make things significantly easier. And yes, many of you have pointed out correctly that you can install Windows on your Steam Deck, or Chimera OS, which is like Steam OS on a Windows device. But I'm sure that at least some people out there, like me, are too lazy or don't want to bother with formatting, and that's where the Steam Deck's simplicity kicks in. So I would rather have the performance and flexibility in my pocket versus the Deck that obviously can't fit in my pocket. I mean, it does most things really well, but not one thing the best. If you're a regular viewer of the channel, you might be expecting me now to tell you to just wait. The thing is, if you need a handheld right now, the Steam Deck at its price point, and especially when it's on sale, is really hard to beat. Consider this, you could buy a refurbished or used Steam Deck and get some AR glasses for the price of an ROG Ally. And like I said earlier, you might not be able to play all the games at the highest settings, but the fact that you can play the games is still pretty impressive. All of that said, what are your thoughts on how the Steam Deck is doing right now? Are you in the market for one, or are you putting yours up on the market? What's your device of choice? Let me know in the comments, and while you're at it, don't forget to click all the buttons, and why not check out that One X Player 2 or X Real Beam review next. GG.